Hello, music theory students. This is a video about how to complete a diatonic sequence. It's a step-by-step guide. And this is if you decide you want to do a diatonic sequence in 2/4 meter. So my other videos have shown you the different types of sequences that you can do. This one is going to be using a deceptive resolution sequence. The sequence doesn't really matter too much. Just make sure that if you're doing the assignment that is due as a result of this video and this class, then this one is compose a sequence in F minor and 2/4 meter based on the ascending 5/6 sequence. So your sequence would be going up by step. When we're doing a deceptive resolution sequence, it means that this video will demonstrate the deceptive resolution going down by third. I want you to be paying attention to the meter, what I'm talking about meter, and how you take the sequence and elaborate it and decorate it. Okay, so begin by, you're gonna have a blank piece of paper that looks like this. We are not working from a cantus. In fact, we can't, because our sequence is built from a pattern from the base up, right? So the first thing that you do when you look at this is you say, okay, I have this blank piece of paper. You know you're in G minor. It's already been set up as G minor. In the one that you'll be doing, it's in F minor, but you always start the bass on the tonic. And if you're going down, it's good to start on an upper G. If you were going up, as in the ascending 5/6, I would say start on the lower G, or in this case, on a lower F. But both the upper F and the lower F can work in the one that you're going to be doing. So in this case, you start on the outside. We're going to do the framework on the outside. The middle will end up being your sequence. Okay, so if you were doing the deceptive resolution sequence, as this one says, you would start by adding your whole notes. Okay, and so forth. Okay, so that would be the deceptive resolution sequence. You want 3 notes plus a 4th one that gets you to your cadence. Okay, if you were doing the ascending 5/6 sequence, in this case in G minor, I would start down here, and then I would be moving up by step, right? Because my basic baseline moves up by step. Okay. Sorry, my finale, I didn't set this up completely properly. Okay, so that would be to set up your ascending 5/6. I'm just going to delete all these now because let me go to the next page, because I now have my baseline set up. Sorry, this is the descending, the deceptive resolution sequence. So it's descending by thirds, and I already have my analysis. I'm not putting any other chords, Roman numeral chords under there. All I need to see is you're starting on the tonic. So you're starting on the bass tonic, and here we're moving down to 2. The ascending 5/6, you end up going up by step, and you end up on 4. Okay, so the first step, put the bass in whole notes on the bottom. Okay, that's step 1A, I'm calling it. Okay. 1B, you choose one of the decorations. And in the previous videos, I've talked about what's possible for each of the sequences. For the ascending, for the deceptive resolution sequence, we do a skip step or we do passing. So I've done the root position possibility for this one with a skip step. So this means that this chord is going to be D, F, A, and potentially C. Okay, and then this one, B flat, D, F, and potentially A, and so forth. Okay, so you decide what your elaboration is going to be. You have 2 options for each. So you decide what that's going to be. And then finally, for preparing, well, not quite finally, but then you're going to do the soprano, and you decide to do this in tenths, octaves, double octaves, or compound fifths. So in this case, we're doing it in fifths. So we get 4 notes. So this is the beginning of our sequence. This is the 3rd statement, and this is the beginning of our cadence. Okay, so statement 1, statement 2, statement 3. Okay, so once you have that basic framework done, we now, step 1D, the final of preparing our framework, is we now set up our soprano, figure out how we're going to elaborate the soprano. And the most important part here is to make sure that whatever this note is, it's a chord tone of the chord that's going to be on your weak beat, or your elaborating chord, right? So this is going to be a G triad. This is going to be an E flat triad, diatonic E flat triad. This is going to be a diatonic C triad, and this is going to be a diatonic A triad, right? These ones are our root positions, so this will be a D, maybe a D7, okay? So D minor, D, F, A, and C. So notice that I have decided to do a broken chord here, okay? So there's a broken chord, so then whatever you choose in the first measure, you have to do for the other measures, and this will be something that regularly comes up, okay? So once you've done that, you've prepared your framework. We're basically done with these outside, but I'm going to leave these outside staves there because that's what you'll be doing for your assignment. Okay, step 2, the first one. This is when we now put it into a meter. So you draw your bar lines. For yours, you are going to have to draw. So make sure when you first do that when you're setting up your sequence, you have enough space. When you're setting up your framework, you have enough space to draw those lines, because you're going to want to draw the lines before each of the strong beat notes, right? So that you have a 2/4 measure, a 2/4 measure, right? Obviously, it's going to stay in 2/4 all the way through. So from those whole notes and half notes that we created on the outside, you're going to put that into 2/4 meter. That means now that our half notes turn into quarter notes, and then it's just straightforward. So this is in 2/4 meter, this is the most straightforward. Okay, so now the framework has been moved into the meter. We know what we're going to be decorating. So the next step, we go to elaborate our soprano. Okay, so start with just that first measure. Try a bunch of different options. But for your options here, I'm moving this down so you can see this here. For your options, you're going to elaborate each quarter note beat with 3-note vocal figures. That would be with 8th notes, right? So 3-note vocal figures in spondaic and trochaic rhythm. So 2 8th notes or a dotted 8th to a 16th. 4-note vocal figures in dactylic and anapestic. So we have one right here. So this is our dactylic figure. Anapestic would be the opposite, right? So there's your 4-note, downbeat to downbeat 4 notes. And then your 4-note and 5-note instrumental figures, those will be the 4-note within the measure 4-note, which is a prime embellishment here, or your 5-note, which would be strong beat to strong beat. Okay, so those are the different ways, and those are both in spondaic rhythm. They're in an even 16th note rhythm. Make sure for all of this that you're following our rules of consonance and dissonance. Dissonances come in by step, generally through passing. Consonants, you need to leap to a consonance. Okay, so in this case, this is the pattern that has been chosen, a prime embellishment first, and then we have a 4-note arpeggiation, right? So we have a leap of a third, and then that other leap that would have been a third down to here is filled in. So this is our 4-note arpeggiation pattern. Okay. Once you like I try a bunch of different options first. Once you like one that sounds good with the bass, okay, once you like that, then you repeat it exactly, but at the different pitch level. So if you're doing an ascending 5/6, you've got your frame here, you just start on the notes that you have there, but you follow the pattern exactly. So this prime embellishment is going to go here, and then your arpeggiation here, prime embellishment, arpeggiation, okay? So it ends up looking like this. Okay, so statement 1, statement 2, statement 3. Okay, and again, this is for the deceptive resolution sequence. The ascending 5/6 would mean that these patterns would move up by step. Okay, so we repeat the patterns in each of the subsequent measures. Then you need to decorate the bass. Okay, so not very much decoration. You can see here, make sure that if you're leaping to a chord tone, and it needs to be a consonant chord. So you just have the root position and the first inversion chord. You could have filled this in with passing, because we can have passing in here. So you could have done an anapestic figure if you wanted there. But in this case, we're just keeping it simple. If you don't even have to decorate if you don't want to the bass. It can stay really static. So keep it quiet, a profile quieter than the soprano, limit the bass to 3- and 4-note vocal figures, and you can also use the repetition figure. In another video, in one of the other elaborations, I show that repetition figure. Again, dissonance can be introduced in passing, and you need to make sure you don't forget to put in the figured bass. If you move from a root position to a first inversion chord, don't forget your figured bass. Okay, so that's the decoration of the bass. Then we need to add our inner voices. Okay, our inner voices, as you can see here, are just realizing the harmony. So you only decorate if you need to. If you've lost a note in the soprano decoration or in the bass decoration, then the inner voices generally need to move to make sure we have the chord. So this sequence is all about triads. There is no sevenths in them, and all the dissonances are come about via step, via passing. Okay, so you add your inner voices, making sure everything works. Really be careful over the bar line about your parallel fifths and parallel octaves. But once you figure out what works in this first measure going into the second measure, remember it gets repeated exactly. So you just have to work really hard on that first measure, make sure all the voice leading works fine. Once you've got it figured out, you repeat it exactly in statement 2 as in statement 3 going into the penultimate measure. Okay. After this, we can now worry about the cadence. Okay, so the first thing is we need to set up our perfect authentic cadence. In our deceptive resolution sequence, we end up on a pre-cadential chord. Okay, so your pre-cadential dominant chord, so we end up on 2. So on the next beat, we need to get that 5 in there. So this is what we have here. And then on the final measure, we just have the tonic. Okay, and that stem's going the other way. It should be going down, but it will in the next screen. Okay, so we've just set up our cadence here. If you're doing the ascending 5/6, this will be a 4 chord, and it'll look the same. You'll have a 4 chord here, and then you have a 5 and then a 1. If you're doing the the descending natural succession sequence, then you're going to be going down by step, right? And you'll end up with the 5 on the strong beat here. And if that's the case, then that 5 has that whole measure, and then your 1 chord comes on the next, again, where it comes here. So the 5 ends up being here. But of course, this is the example of the deceptive resolution sequence. Okay, once you've framed that bass and we know where our harmonies are going, so we have a 2 chord on the beat 1, a 5 chord on beat 2, now we can actually decorate the soprano and decorate the bass a little bit more. Okay, so this one now we've decided to go into first inversion 2 chord, which goes really nicely into this 5. And we really, if we can, you really want that idiomatic 5, 5, 1. Okay, so you really want that to work that way. The soprano, you want to try to continue things if you can. This time we've done another prime embellishment here. Now it's going the opposite way as before, kind of signaling the end. So you can't have an exact repetition of here, but if you can, keep it somewhat similar. But again, you don't have to. This is now signaling our move to our cadence. If you're in minor, we can't forget that we need to raise scale degree 7, so the third of the chord gets raised. And I've already prepared to add the chordal 7th here on the weak beat of the second beat. Okay, so there's my decoration of my soprano and my bass. And the final step is to add the inner voices at the final cadence to make sure we have all those beats to add that 7th in, right? So here, this chord, I have my D, F sharp, A, and there's my C to create that 7th chord. So we have a really nice, perfect, authentic cadence at the very end and making sure that we have the proper figured bass. So this final step, this is what it sounds like, just a diatonic sequence with a perfect, authentic cadence added to the end. Okay, and that's your diatonic sequence written in 2/4 meter.